the one again. Beautiful. Don't forget the power in the right hand. That's good. Okay, just when you throw that right hand, don't just, if you're going to put a third punch on it, make sure the right hand's the hard shot. So you just touch him with the left hook. Just bang, left hook just coming back to keep your back on balance.
In your career, Barry, you was a legend of boxing.
Thank you.
No, you were, but at any point during your career, did it become a little bit overwhelming?
I did. You know, there were times even during my professional career where it all became a bit much, and of course, having that sort of non-political stance in Ireland, being an Irishman, fighting for the British title, Catholic, marrying a Protestant, all of the pressures of that outside of boxing was also a little bit daunting and overwhelming too, but I was very lucky in that I had a very close family and they were all around me, so I could always go and talk to them whenever I had any issues. But I know there are other fighters, I know that there are fighters who aren't in that position, who don't have as close a family network as I had, and who do need help and don't get it. They often need to go and say, look, I need to talk to a counsellor, I need a bit of help here. But a great majority of them don't want to do that and are afraid to own up to that. And they actually go into fights, really, where they're not 100% psychologically right. And it's a very tough thing, and you can't have this sort of softly approach to everybody. And in boxing, it's an unusual sport. It's a very difficult sport, but there are many cases like that. Yeah.
So how would you manage it if a young fighter you was coaching said, I'm struggling? Would you try and...
I would take him out.
Would you mask it?
I would try and help him, and if it didn't work, I'd pull him out of the fight. Try that again. One more time. So, right uppercut, right up. Make sure you balance it right. You were falling the other day when you were sparring.
We're speaking about depression in sport. We've seen you coaching the young fighters, and you're teaching them like left hooks and how to throw a punch. Yeah. But is there anything which in boxing prepares fighters for that side of it?
Yes, that's a really good point, because there isn't. And I feel it should be incumbent on these organisations, whether it's Sport England, whether it's the Sports Council, put some money into boxing. We all need help, and there's loads of them, and it can be a complete contradiction. You know, you've got guys that are hard as nails, but, you know, they're very sensitive guys, and they need advice, and they need help, and they need support. There's lots of that.
In my career, you build this persona, and whether you can live up to it or you can't live up to it is one thing. But when you start putting the pressure on yourself, I can remember 2006-07 when I had a complete shocker. Yeah. And it was hard for me to speak about it to people, even within the dressing room. Yeah. You know, I was seen to be this character who was unflappable. Yeah. However, you do go back to your room every night, and whatever people think about who you are, I think at times it can be very different.
When you switch the lights off, that's when it really happens. You think, oh, hold on a second here, have I bitten on more than I can chew? So there are many incidents like that throughout every boxer and through every cricketer's career, I'm sure.
I was the same, because I remember David Lloyd was my coach at Lancashire, and he told me when I was young, he said, when you walk out to bat, put your helmet on once you get out there. He said, walk out there, have a look round, walk out as if you own the stadium. Yeah. So every time I walked out to bat, I did that. At no point did I feel I owned that stadium. Yeah, never. I used to walk out there. I used to look at the opposition. Every now and then, I'd have a word with someone on the way out, the wicket-keeper, to say as if, I'm not bothered.
Like, yeah, exactly.
But once I was walking out, I was as nervous as the next man.
It must be
and I was walking out there, and I didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
I was not in that much control, but I give this front of, here I am. I'm here now.
It's all about never showing fear, never showing intimidation, and it's, you know, every one of us. And let me tell you, there's not one fighter in the world that hasn't walked to that ring and thought, what am I doing? Are you sure I'm doing the right thing? And so every fighter is in exactly the same position. No matter the bravado and the cockiness and all that is a front.
I'm a boxing fan, so to go and speak to Barry for me was a thrill anyway. How many titles has he won? How many fights has he won? To listen to him speak, I realised that if it can affect someone like Barry McGuigan, then this can affect anyone.
How are you, Freddie? All right?
Good, mate. Nice here, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the Heartbreak Hotel. Yeah. Nice to see you. How's the family? Good?
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
Really good. Thanks.
brilliant, mate. Come in. Not like walking to the ring. In my mind, I was thinking you're going to get beat here. You're going to get beat here.
Well,
Actually, walking to the ring before I fought Manny Pacquiao, I thought, I'm going to get beat here. You've peaked too soon. I thought, if my sparring partners are giving me a dusting, what's going to happen here tonight? And the bell went for the first round. And I've always been a little bit aggressive and reckless, but I was overly reckless. I was just fighting as if to, please, Rick, just get one good shot in or get one good body shot in and it'll all be over. And I went in reckless, and as you know what happened, he flattened me in 2 rounds. Was devastated, you know. I felt like hanging my head in shame. Cried and cried and cried. Every time it took me like 4 months to actually watch the tape of the Pacquiao fight. The depression, you know, went as far back as even before the first defeat. It niggles at you because you're under so much pressure. But then realising that, you know, my days were numbered and, you know, I had to retire. And it was just a gradual process.
Do you think it was during your career?
I think it was during my career, absolutely, definitely.
Do you think if you hadn't been a boxer, you'd have experienced it? Or do you think it was triggered by boxing?
No, I think it was triggered by boxing. I mean, me, personally, I was such a proud fighter, I was such a proud man. You know, I was able to beat people that were really better than me because I was so proud. I had such a big heart, I could overwhelm fighters. So then to lose in the manners in which you did, in fact, getting knocked out, was me being such a proud man to have someone knock me out. It was very hard for me to come to terms with. You know, I just really went from bad to worse. And then, you know, along with it, I started drinking a little bit more than what I would normally do. And which, as you know, if you're suffering from depression and then you add drink to it, then it's just like a runaway train.
Well, that's one of the things that I did. When I was bad, I'd start having a drink. It was all right to begin with, but then you'd have a couple more.
I'd go from, hey, cheerful, and feeling, oh, that's more like it, that's
you forget,
right.
don't you? You forget.
But then when you have that little bit more, at the end of the night, you know, you sat in the corner of the pub sobbing, you know, in front of your friends, like, and you think, oh, my word. And then when you get up in the morning, you feel really bad. You remember what you've done the night before. Oh, what was I doing? I was crying in front of me pals, and I was going on, and I was moaning, and I was, you know, I had to be put in the taxi, you know, and stuff like that, and you're thinking, oh, what's up with me? I suffered from depression after the Mayweather fight, and when you think I had 3 fights from there on in with depression, if you like. So
it's an effort to get into the ring.
It was really, you know, and you know, but it's very, very hard for a man, especially a boxer, to go to someone and go, I'm struggling, I need help. You know, it's tough.
In 2006, I was in Australia, I was captain of England. We'd been beaten 3-0 by Christmas, so we've lost the Ashes. And Christmas is meant to be a nice time. I had a few drinks with my dad on Christmas Eve, and as he was going, we got into a bit of a chat, and I broke down crying. I started saying, I'm sorry I've let you down. There's nothing, I've tried my best. And I was in floods of tears saying, Dad, I've really, really tried my best. I can't do any more than what I'm doing. And then my dad started crying. And I don't think from that point I ever got back to the player I was. I think that 2006 for me knocked me so much, it was always going to be impossible. I dusted myself down, I suppose, and I came back to a degree, but never the same sort of player. I was going to say, when you got them gloves and you had your first professional fight, did you think you'd have all this?
No, I mean, in fact, me trainer got them just in case, because he had a feeling, you know, that I was going to go on and do well. Obviously, not to the extent that I went on to do, but he just had a sneaky feeling, so he kept the gloves, and you know, they're the ones for the first ones, and that obviously first fight led to, you know, to this type of stuff, you know, of there's the IBF belt, won the IBF light welterweight title twice. I won the WBA light welterweight title, the WBA welterweight title.
It was interesting talking to Ricky because, you know, the two of us have got a very, very similar public persona. Happy-go-lucky, enjoy a pint, play sport just for the sheer fun of it. And it seems that wasn't necessarily the case. I think having spoke to Ricky, someone I know, someone I respect and was a fan of, listening to him talk more openly and candidly about some of his feelings and address some of these areas in his life, I think it's making me talk more openly about my feelings, and it actually feels good to do.